It has just gone after 2, and we would love to greet and welcome you to this first Saturday, first Sabbath of the Heritage Month, and that's September. My name is Pat Komafani on Pat Komafani Conversations, and as you know, come this time every Saturday, it's the Faith Heroes. And that's when, we take ourselves back to school to learn a little bit more about the heroes and the heroines that are in the Bible, who are championed, and sometimes many of them are mentioned in the roll call of faith in that great parade of faith heroes in Hebrews 11. And because of that, we always are looking for a simple message for somebody to understand, but a good enough message for somebody one day to be in heaven. And so, with those words, I welcome you and have my panel with me, and I would love to first welcome the producer, Umfundisi Mapumulo, and then I will welcome the ladies. Ngwenya, let's welcome you again to this beautiful episode. It's good to have you again.
Thank you very much, Ngwenya. It's good to be here. May the Lord be blessed with this program today.
I thought you would be asleep by now, tired from the divine service because you were preaching as well. We still believe. Well, we still believe that Uma Musara is the mother of all nations, and we continue with that subject today. Umama Umfundisi Xhamela is joining us. Kazlam, welcome. Galas Sabata Sasipete, a woman with the issue of blood.
Hey!
And it's good to have you. Good to have you again. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I greet you all. I'm excited to be back. I'm following these conversations, by the way, whether I'm in or out.
Oh, lovely.
I just have to be here in the afternoon on Sabbath.
Yes. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's quite an honor. That's quite an honor. And I do want to say that it's a special honor also to have you, particularly in your leadership. And I think the Holy Spirit drove us to invite you because we're standing on the borders of what was Women's Month and what is now Heritage Month. And when we then look at the life of Sarah, we, on one hand, commemorate a top influential woman in the entire Christian community, and while we celebrate such an AWM, we then on the other hand, because she's called the mother of all nations, that then becomes she is the heritage of the Christian community. Bonke omama abakhonza uKristu bamele bazibuze into kokuba umama uSara wenza njani ukuze abe kanti ungena kule roll call lomqulu omkhulu kangaka wamakholwa, and I think we will look at that, and I think I'm fascinated in a special way by her story, because when we look at Sarah, we're not talking of a mistakeless kind of a Bible character. We're not talking about a perfect kind of Bible character, but one thing that we know is that she's the mother of all nations. And andifuna ungena nzulu kuyo, ndiyitye abefundisi bami bekhona, ipanel yethu ikhona. Also to join us shortly will be Usis Nomonde, Radebe ntombi yakwaRhoji phaya eMapumulo, ngugandaganda wevangeli ke lo ngumshumayeli nomvangelikazi omkhulu, and I think she's trying to connect naye azosijoina. Apologies from umama Ncebakazi Xhango, and she couldn't be with us here today. Let me say, Gazlam, well, the audience by now probably will remember that we call each other Gazlam ngoba ikhona lento kamagaba phaya ekhaya kuba umama kaMamqhinebe umkhwekazi wami ngumagaba, laa nto ke ngoku yenza intoba sitye Gazlam. I think this is Sarah part 2. It is Sarah part 2, not only in the chronology of the story as the story develops, but it is Sarah part 2 also because of ukutyeba story, because of the revelations that God has given you now in your preparation, in your research, Nomfundisi Mapumulo. So far I have two of you. Mfundisi Mapumulo, I think let us begin. Let us begin with there are certain pillars ekubalulekileyo into okokuba siziqwalasele ngosara. You may also, Mfundisi Mapumulo, want to do a little bit of recap where we were in part 1 or last week, what areas we touched, and how we connect with today. Over to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Ngwenya, and good afternoon to our listeners and our viewers. Look, one does not feel qualified to talk about such a great person in the person of Sarah. There is rich history here. Last week we discussed partly the historical background, who Sarah is, and the impact that she had in many different ways, and humanity in her. We did look at that also. Look, every great person in the Bible, no matter what kind of impact he or she had, every person has had his or her own shortcomings one way or the other. And so we look at both with Sarah, and we learned great things, not only about Sarah, but also about the God of Sarah. And all of us can identify with this history. That, for example, that even though Sarah was disadvantaged in a way by being impatient in waiting for God to fulfill His promise by introducing Hagar in the story, in their life, but in this whole thread, we keep seeing God at work, but we're also keeping seeing Sarah loving his God, still viewing her God as a faithful God. And so as we close this series of Women's Month, and we're starting this month of heritage, and we felt that let's bring the two together as we begin the Heritage Month. You know, Sarah is such a tall figure, religiously or religiously speaking, and so the Bible, when it reflects on Sarah and Abraham, Sarah is said to be the mother of all nations, and when you talk about nations, you have no other option, of course, to look at history, to look at heritage, and that's who Sarah is. There is no way we could talk about faith without looking at such with Sarah, and that's why we said today, you know what? Let's look at this. And the question that one may ask is exactly, what is heritage? Now, you know, the dictionary, some dictionaries will define, for example, that the heritage is a certain feature or a number of features that belong to a particular culture or to a particular society. Now, even though it happened in the past, but that tradition or that feature of the culture is still of great importance or of historical importance even today. And so such is the case also with Sarah. Sarah may have lived donkey years ago, but when you traced our faith, you can't help also but connect with the calling of Abraham and Sarah. And so that's the reason why we are bringing them together and say, look, whether you are male or female, you are connected to Sarah by faith. And of course, there are rich principles that we'll discuss today as to what is it that we can learn from Sarah as we journey throughout life. Thank you, Ngwen.
Well, thank you so much. I want at this moment to usher another panelist, uSisi Nomonde selefikile ugazi lam baninzi abagazi lam apha estudio bomabini amama ngugazi lam. Nomonde, please do unmute yourself, gazi lam, so that sizokubona nawe uzongena apha emoyeni. It's good to have you. I must say, it's good to have you. It's good to have you. Ufika ngexesha eli-right kuba most importantly, with conversations, when we tackle a Bible character, we always ask ourselves, what went wrong? How did God show up in what went wrong? How do we see ourselves in that which went wrong? And how can we see ourselves in the recovery path and the glorious path going forward to how then God manifested himself through that particular Bible character? Umama uSarah ke, umama wamakholwa onke, the heritage of the Christian community. Njengoba besivala i-Women's Month, singena kwi-Heritage Month. She when we talk of faith, abantu abaninzi bayibona kule couple kamama uSarah notata Abraham. Sometimes it becomes difficult to separate them. When you discuss Abraham, somehow you find yourself having to mention Sarah and vice versa. And I want the panel to feel free to be able to do that. Gazlam Buimbui, Nangu Umonde Selapa. Ni ngamajoni alevangeli nobabini ufika ke wena ke ungekathethi. And from you, Gazlam, I am interested in the 4 pillars that we need to have covered by the time iphela program, and then from there, through the inspiration that the Lord has given to all of you in the studio, please share with us what you know, what we are supposed to know, to make sure into okokuba nobethu ubomi buyasinda through such a powerful Bible character as uSarah. Gazlam, over to you, Mfundisi Xhamela.
Okay. I greet you all. Ndibulisa noSisi Nomonde, my cousin. When I looked at the panel and I saw her in the panel, I said, "Oh, Nkosi yam, kubizwe abantu abathanda uthetha." You know, she's my role model. I look up to her, and she is my inspiration, and I really take honor and excited to share the platform with her. All right. On the subject of Sarah, getting into this wonderful woman, I'm excited by one comment that I saw here, Gazlam Patko, which says Sarah is AWM Life President. That comment excites me, because indeed she is entitled to be the AWM, the Women's Ministries Life President, because we are talking about a great woman here. And I also believe that when you want to talk about someone, you need to know exactly who is this person that we are talking about. Yes, I had a privilege to watch part 1, but I was excited as well I want to mention that's 4 facts that are important if you want to know more about Sarah. That's where, when you unpack someone and you get all the background, and you then understand why the A and the B and the C, you understand why she had to do what she did, you understand her background and so on. First of all, Sarah is mentioned 4 times in the New Testament. To me, that was interesting. Mentioned 4 times in the New Testament, and I believe the people who are watching are also taking notes. In the book of Romans 4:19, you will see Sarah being mentioned. In the book of First Peter 3 verse 6, you will see Sarah mentioned. In the book of Galatians 4 verse 21 to 31, you will see Sarah mentioned. But the one that excites me the most is when she is mentioned in the book of heroes. Hey, Hebrews 11, verse 11. That one excites me. That one put me in the preaching mode. You know, especially when I listened to part 1, where people were highlighting, you know, the mistakes that she made, the less faith that she had, the less patient she was, and all those things. How she messed around. But you know, this God, to have Sarah being mentioned in Hebrews 11 verse 11, it says, therefore, through faith, Sarah herself received strength to conceive the seed. When you conceive, you are conceiving the seed. The seed, not the son, the seed. That on its own is pregnant. That on its own, but I don't want to get there. But by faith herself, she received strength to conceive the seed and was delivered of a child when she judged him faithful who had promised. Look at this woman, you know, judged him faithful who had promised. Another important aspect about Sarah, she was buried, Sarah was buried in a place which is today known as the Cave of Patriarchs. Okay, and it is located in Palestine City, and it is known for being the oldest prayer structure in the world, and that is continually used. That on its own, to me, it means this woman is present. This woman is forever present. That's why earlier on I said I agree with that person who says she's a life president. Another fact, important fact, which I did not know, which says Sarah is not mentioned when Abraham is, you know, prepared to sacrifice Isaac. She is not mentioned. In fact, it says Sarah dies in the next chapter, and some Jewish scholars they have concluded that when Sarah learns what her husband was about to do, she dies of a broken heart. When because she didn't believe maybe that God will you know, rescue her son, you know, and that's what the Jewish scholars believe, that she died of a broken heart. Another important thing about Sarah is that she's not only the wife, to Abraham. She is she's also half sister and her niece. Both Abraham and Sarah, they have Terah as their father or grandfather. And now, Gazlam, it gives me, can you get married to your niece? You know, these days we are talking about Istuko. If I meet a Gaba there, can I get married to a Gaba being a Magaba? You know, I don't know. But this is what happens with Sarah. So these interesting things about Sarah, she also happened to be part of in the lineage of Christ. Look at this woman, man. Look at this woman, from a mess to become in the lineage of Christ. To me, that's the last one.
Okay.
Yes, from a mess. Yeah, the last one is bearing a child when she reached menopause. Now, this one reminded me that nothing is impossible for God. I mean, we are talking about a God who even placed a baby in Mary's womb, the one who was a virgin. You know, that excites me, because God can move more than we can imagine. He is God more than we can ever imagine. And therefore, he isn't limited by biology or physics. He is not. This is the kind of God Sarah, who is not limited by biology or physics. You know, so somebody who's listening out there, who is struggling to conceive. We are talking about a God who is not limited to biology or physics.
Kazlam, uphanze wayireya le program. Uphanze wayireya yonke. Ubona bendikubrika nje Kazlam. Because you're saying profound things, and I look in the mirror, I see some of the elements that we need to make sure that we touch before we come to this climax. And part of that, and part of that is uThixo, this God, not only blesses uSarah, but even blesses uHagar. What kind of God is this? So is the story more about uSarah, or is the story more about God? Such that uSarah afumane kazi le title ka mother of all nations. I need to unpack el gama lika mother of all nations. Kazlam, I don't know what the Lord showed you when you were going through this passage, but please share it with us.
Ndiyabulela Gazi, ndiyabulela Mbuyi mzawam nawe. Andiyazi shem Jabu usengxakini, uvalelwe ngaphandle. Uvaleleke ngaphandle. Kuse blood start up. Kodwa ke ngoba ke likhona igazi lika Yesu uyangena ke nawe ngoba I always maintain elika Yesu igazi li strong kunala a temporary aphelela lapha emhlabeni. Amachawe namazango anogaba sidityaniswe ngawo apha, kodwa elika Yesu alipheli noba ngaphela lasemhlabeni. So simunye mjabu andifuna uvala ngaphandle. I want to thank the wisdom that and the Spirit of God that said uNombuyisela qala iqala, because I always say when I read the Bible, ndiyayithanda ke lento yoba uThixo speaks to theologians that are scientific with the Bible, and also to lay people like us and Nomputo, because uNombuyisela brings those things that I would not have gone into, because I don't have the how can, of theological background that she has. And the Lord, look, she brings all of that here so that I don't need to go into it. Ukhona into ezimbini ke ndingathathanga xesha ezivele summary in that breakdown, that the overview. Zimbini zithi, what does it take to be a mother such as Sarah, and why is motherhood important? And now maybe perhaps let me start by the question, why is he called the mother of nations? Uthe wena ngokwakho Mphuthumi, uSarah is synonymous to Abraham. So Abraham, if you track the story, you have to start at chapter 12, actually 11 of Genesis, which a few people ignore Utera in this journey. Utera starts the journey to Canaan. Actually, he initiates Utata Abraham journey to Canaan, but then apelele Haran at 205. So she, the patriarch engumzali, yiyo esukile yokuqala. Uthi kufika ke ngoku bepake, I'm not sure whether how much way en route to Canaan. Apha bebepake khona Haran distance wise in specifics. But ubafumana bepake en route to a fulfillment of a promise. And he says, ayiphelelanga apha indlela, makwanjweni. And when he makes that challenge, that invitation, he gives a promise with it. It's because I'm going to make you famous, but no, I can't be fame. And I'm going to make you father of nations. And akazukwazi kuba father of nations engenayo isibeleko sokuba agcine inzala yakhe, which immediately ushers in uSarah engabizwanga. So the promise made to Abraham of being a father of nations was synonymous and unanimously being, without her being mentioned, made to Sarah.
Okay.
Because at that time, and the thing is, already with chapter 11, uSarah has been declared nyumba. With chapter 11, because I'm not sure what limitations theologically came when Jabu no you will know what beqala nini umuntu, because abantu bebephile thousands of years, 200 and above. Bebeqala nini umuntu bakuthiwa unyumba, kuncanywa nini, bekuncanywa nini ngoko. ukuba ngaba hayi akazali noko ngoku. Ngoba already ku-chapter 11 sedeclariwe and Sarah was barren. So isithembiso sifika kumntu odeclarishiweyo ngamehlo abantu awenyama as hopeless, akubhaleki kulaa bhodi. But God has already declared against people's predictions and declarings and statements and labels of barrenness, nobunyumba. Against it, he says, Zujonga up, watch this space. I am going to bring not only a son, but a nation, not a nation, nations, including us. In that statement, akusathethwa ngokungamaJuda. Ndifuna undenza umfundisi kuthethwa ngathi ababe ngaphandle savalwa sangena, and therefore he became a mother of nations. That is another theological science kaYesu owavula umnyango uba ngaba le nzala kaAbraham ivuleleke nakuthi. And that's how she becomes.
Sure, the mother of nations.
That's how she becomes mother of nations, yes.
Mfundisi Mapumulo Ngwenya, I like the connection that the ladies are bringing between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Talk to me.
Yes. Look, because when you look at the New Testament, specifically the story of Sarah, this is where you begin to see, especially the book of Hebrews, because sometimes we read the book of Hebrews and make an assumption that those heroes were people who never sinned or who were unlike us. But it's a chapter. So you look at in the New Testament, in the fulfillment of these things, you look at what happened, what God promised, what happened in the Old Testament. So when you look at the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, and having read the story of Sarah in the book of Genesis, you begin to see a number of things. Now, number one, that the story of Sarah, the story of Sarah, it's a story about God. God who has no discrimination in as far as who he can use and when. Now, in the Old Testament times, I mean, you had to have a child, worst case scenario, within the first 10 years, after which you had declared barren. So when you look at the so-called weaknesses, weak points of Sarah, and you look at the issue of salvation in the New Testament, you begin to see that this is truly remember Exodus chapter 34, where that defines who God is, the character of God. Now, one of the things that is mentioned there, that God is patient, that God is kind, you begin to see in the book of Hebrews, because the book of Hebrews is actually a place that gives you promise by virtue of seeing people like Rahab, Sarah, because all of them have history. So what does that say to me and you? That, look, it doesn't matter what kind of history you have, but there is hope for you, as there was hope and fulfillment for Sarah. Now, the other thing that you begin to see, to learn from this story of Sarah, when you look at what happens in the book of Genesis and the book of Hebrews, you begin also to see that God really chases us for our benefit until he saves us. God was not stuck with Sarah. And when you go back into the history of Sarah, look, there was nothing that was called Hebrews before Sarah and Abraham. There's nothing like that.
Nothing.
That when he came, they are the first people to be called Hebrews. So God went out to the heathens and called Abraham. Let me throw something quickly here also about Abraham. Abraham grew up in a home where his father, the story says this, the father owned a business. And amongst the things did, he sold idols. Okay, so he sold idols there, and so one day the father was gone for whatever reason for some time, and so the father comes back, and lo and behold, when he gets into the store, he finds these idols demolished, but there was only one idol that was left, and this idol had a hammer in his hand. And the father couldn't believe what he's seeing. So he asked Abraham, man, Abraham, what's happening here?
What happened here?
In your absence, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, there was an argument between the idols and they fought. And this one had a hammer and he destroyed the rest of them. And then the father, listen to what the father then says. The father says, no, don't be silly. Idols cannot do that because these things are exactly what the idols. So Abraham then says to the father,
my point exactly.
Why are you entangled?
Yeah, my point exactly.
Entanglement.
Spiritual entanglement.
So in other words, even though Abraham was in the midst of idolatry,
connection
there was something in him that there's a seed. You know, before God placed a seed in Sarah, he had already placed a seed in Abraham, because at the back of his mind, there was something wrong with idolatry. And that is why God gave him the wisdom to do what he did. And so it dawned also on his father that, look, there is really a bigger call. When now the call came, because then Abraham was ready. Are you with me? So all of us, regardless of your background, God is ready to reach out to you. So therefore, we must never say some people are outside. I don't know. This is one thing I never understood. You know, because that's how God started the Jewish nation. He went from outside. There, and then so God can start a new nation of faith-filled women in you as a woman today, because that seed, you have it as a woman. And that is why I would hate to see or to hear of any woman who underestimates herself and what God can do through her. Because of Sarah, we have learned that in you, single woman, married woman, divorced woman, there is a seed.
Widowed woman.
A widowed woman, thank you. There is a seed for you to become a mother of all nations of faith.
Again.
Uyazi, what I think I want to highlight here, and that's Bamba Kwaizolo, talking to women especially, is what Mapumulo has just touched on, that God does not challenge us from a point of perfection.
Correct.
Usara is a perfect example, especially Usara, of that God, you only ask us to be perfect within our imperfections. If you have, and I always say this, Utiko asks that in your imperfection, be perfectly aligned to him. And that's all he needs, because he can work with that.
Thank you.
He can work with that. He can work with that. So this story for me highlights how an imperfect woman like Sarah could end up being a women's ministry's president forever, till eternity.
For life.
Because
for life.
Eternity, it goes beyond this life, because in heaven we will look at a city where Mama was fundisizinto. And this is where I'm coming in now. You see, I take two things. Let me give you what in Sarah's imperfection. You see, in that summary, she's an example of faith, and I shook my head. She's an example of how we struggle within our faith for our faith to be grown and expanded. Because right through, she doesn't get it.
Type in the point.
She's an example of how faith as a muscle of spirituality gets exercised and multiplied. Isiwivuka. This is what the apostles understood. Because they became aware with man. That's too much strong in our faith in you.
No,
But look at us now.
You know why in the city Kaipindel and Iteta? Because I read somewhere something that said even when she committed the error of saying to Abraham, up, she did that because she was so full of faith, believing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jonga. The thing is, ubheka inyama, uthi enyameni, uthi inyama yami ngokwamehlo enyama ayinokwenzeka lento. Kodwa uthi kuthethile. Kodwa uthi kuthethile and ikholo lami lithi uThixo unceda ozincedayo. Ivesi engekho eBhayibhelini leyo ndiyayazi loo nto, but she's the first candidate eyayikholwa uba uThixo usuhlala umbukele ethe into uzakwenzeka. Nceda uThixo.
And what I like, if I can chip in, what I like kanye kule ndawo sithetha ngayo ndiyavakala ne what I like is what I've learned is the God who delivers on his promises, even if humanly speaking thina against all odds. Ubekhe wayibuza usisi Nomonde into yoba ibisithini iminyaka apho kuthiwa awusoze uphinde ufumane umntwana. You know, when God promised Abraham that he would father a nation, when Abraham and Sarah, they were at a time when they should be way past childbearing years. Way past childbearing years. Apho bebecinga into yoba mhlawumbi uThixo might have changed his mind or forgot about them. But many years after God made that promise, to Abraham, he delivered. You know, so that indinike into yoba God never forgets a promise. I mean, look, man, look at us. He promised that he would fight for us. He promised that he would fight for us. The Lord will fight for you. Exodus 14:14. You don't need to do anything. You just need to be still. If uchilo what I will fight for you, he will deliver on his promise. He promised that he will give us strength, for an example. And because those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. That's a promise. And he delivers on the promise. Isaiah 40:31. He also promised that he will protect us. Those are the promises. And sometimes when the length of time expires between what God said and what you want him to do, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not swoop over you. You know, but what we need to keep in mind, however, that while God answers prayers, he doesn't always answer it in the way we think that he should.
I like that, and I'm going to ask that we come back to that. I like that. We will come back. Now the question, Monde. The question isuka kumbukeli andifuna umbukeli simvalele ngaphandle. I like this question. Sisanda. And Sisanda says, why would God say to an ill-treated woman in an ill-treating situation, go back when Hagar and submit to Sarah? And Manduche biselombuzo kasisanda and say, what life lessons are there? Yabona ke apha ku Faith Heroes applications zibalulekile. What life lessons are there? Make sihoye lo mcimbi kasisanda.
Masuhoye. The reason bendisiza apho, uSarah's big point for me, she scores high on submission. If you want to understand how submissive she was and how God rewarded her, listen to this. Ur was a cosmos city of the time. Basuswa flash any toilets. archaeologists agree, nani nithi theology niyayas, it was the cosmos of the time. It was in a flushing toilets and ceramics when they excavated it. So she was moved from civilization to uncivilization, and she submitted. Azangathi uyandiqhela undisusa apha uthi uwes uthi xa ndithi kuyiwaphi tata uthi awazi. She didn't. She followed both of them, not knowing whither they went. It is said for Abraham, but it also concurs with her. She had to go along. She goes along, and as she goes along, very challenge yaseJiput. Let me show you what submission does. Uza uyumyeni akhe uthi mamela apha ke sisi. Amlibali binkosikazi athi mamela apha khazi wam. Ngoba kaloku mkhazi kuvela inyani umhle. Unjani ukambiza amncoma athi mamela apha mntakatata mamela khazi. Umhle man uyayazi loo nto. Uza kwenzakala pha. Uaphila ngokuthi i-maternal instincts uyaphuma ebufazi nobudoda ngoba umfazi bezawubuza athi xa ndigqibile ukuya khona zabuya nini ngoba umuntu osuka kwenye indoda akabuyeli kwenye indoda. Guess what? She submits even to that. This woman unjani? She submits quietly. Athi kulungile mza wami. Kulungile awunawufa ndikhona ndijongile. Uthi kubukele because I spent time ndicaphuka ndithi Thixo khawume khawume uFaro wenze ntoni for uba indlu yakhe ibethwe kuxoke uAbraham bavumelana nokhazi wakhe uzapha kutheni ndigqiso betha uFaro. And the Spirit says to me, Thixo honors submission. Because Sarah submitted, and I learned that it was not about Abraham's sin, it was about God came and stood up for Sarah. Sarah did the impossible and submitted to her husband's wishes and trusted God for it. And God stood up in the middle of the night. Kwanguye ufuneka athi kulo ndoda ungamphakamisi ungamthinti umfazi womntu lo. Ujonga isikere uAbraham wamkela nelobola. Go back to that verse. Walotyolwa wagqitywa. I mean like going away forever. Gifts and dowry. And Sarah went and trusted God in that case where indoda yakhe ibisithi bye uzaba nosibari wokaFaro at your expense, and indoda izawuphinda ishathe phambili. So the first submission act esiyibonayo yekaSarah submitting to her husband completely, and God being challenged and standing up and defending her. uHagar should have learned uhlala endlini. Look okokuqala into evelayo apha. uHagar is of a different culture as an Egyptian. Omnye lo uvela kwelinye igazi. And i-cultures as fun. I-culture yamaHebhere la uThixo wakhoyinayo as a pilot project through Abraham. Ithi umfazi xa ithatha uhamba nezicaka, and then izicaka zi-extension yakhe kwenzela uba xa engakwazi ukuzala sibonile kooJakob ukubheka ezantsi, zisuka uzawuzala, and abantwana bakhe will be completely totally be abantwana bakaMedem. And this is what she did not get. Her submission challenges came ekuthini as a servant at the time. Forget uba uphina ngoku. She had to submit. That's why Paul later in the New Testament uthi kwisicaka esasiguqukileyo uzawumuntu ubuyele emlungwini wakho ngoba your first Christian act and attitude is to submit to your superiors. Yile notito sasikuthi we are called to submit to authorities. So uHagar forgot her place, that as a servant she was part of uSarah, and uSarah unikisa ngesibeleko sakhe asingomntanakhe umntana kaMedem lo, so she forgot her place. And that man so that's where there are submission issues. In your spiritual walk, you do not forget who you are in the Lord. That is why submission act yethu before singagobela uThixo is to submit to our husbands in the Lord, of course. And then when we have practiced that, then we can qualify. Ngoba uThixo uzawuthi ufuna uzosubmita kuye athi khawume awumhloniphi umyeni wakho. Umjonga kakuphambi kwabantu umphendula kakuphambi kwabantu. Andizukwazi uthetha nawe ngoba ukafunda ukuthobela indoda ufuna uzothobela indoda amadoda uThixo. And that's the issue kaHagar. That's the issue kaHagar.
Go back to your mistress. I will increase your descendants so that they will be too numerous to count.
Jonga mphuthu usweetnisha uyambhatala uthi mamela mntanam andizukukulibala. Uzibona kufe they all have 12 descendants. No mina 12 children, you mean 12 children. Uyabona nje uzothi kuyabalansisa uthi andibuyiseli nje. naxa egxothwa kagxothwa kakubi uthixo akafuni uba kube khona a shadow under his work. You understand? So funeka hambe uIshmayeli uthixo azosebenza kakuhle yedwa kungekho nto eziphithizelayo because selezilibele uHagari esemithi. Uyavisisa bewuthethile unombudisile uzaba nale ngxaki ebese ithini igqibegwabe ndiza kunika ebese imoshile uHagari zisuku uqala kuboneka uzawukhe esemithi wayinto etana sayitshala isisu ithi umedem kathi gqi imchole wazilibala kwangathi nguye umedem wayilibala ikhonto submission yakhe
laa nto umntu
qalwe nguHagari bhabhi ukucholwa komntu qalwe nguHagari. So uthixo had to teach her wasanda umxelele uba mntanam kwafuneka uthixo uyayithanda indaba ngaba siyenze protocol observed kuthixo akadlala uthixo ngolo hlobo awuzutsiba iprotocol uthi siyalingana kuthixo we are neither male nor female kodwa uthixo uyibekile iprotocol zisuka yiyekile kubagaba ithatha.
Uyabona gazi lam, when it comes to Hagari, I'm telling you kufuneka sibeke intente when it comes to Hagar, ngoba that on its own, Jehovah, it's something that has come to give a lesson enzima kakhulu, ngoba kaloku we are dealing with so many different types of Hagars in our life right now, and when we are dealing with different forms of Hagars, that's where you see indoba you need to be a woman who's connected with God, who listens. Kufuneka kubekho inirking ezinto in your
connectivity,
yes, your line of communication with God. It must be the one guiding you. Yes, your tentacles, the radar whatsoever, because there you are not controlled by your emotions okanye umona wakho okanye not umona isikhwele sakho whatsoever, but icebo likaThixo lithini. Remember earlier on we said uSarah nobangaba ebephelelwe yi-patience kangakanani na uthe usisi Nomonde ebona into yoba kowakho umzimba ayizukwenzeka le nto, but ukholelwa uba uThixo wayethe uzaba khona unyana. So connected noThixo. Ewe ikhona ihalabalu yedrama yesoapy, I would call it a soapy, days of our lives, generation odibene no Sarah, bold and the beautiful, odibene no Haggai. But look at God, look at the mercy of God, look at how these people are listening to God. You know, look at how these people are not using themselves. They are listening to what God says. This Hagar person, she's the only one, the first person to call God the God who sees. Look at this person, this third party in this marriage. The one tinesim kesayo, siti unomtana nomien wam. And therefore, I'm declaring war between you and me forever and ever. And you don't connect with God and listen to what God has to say. So whenever we talk about Hagar, we must always know about the plan of God. Ingena, it's interwoven in our mess. It's interwoven in our mistakes. And it's interwoven. And there's a lesson that God... Yes.
But Bomama,
I'm listening.
I don't understand. There's something wrong with God.
We are
God cannot bless me and even bless my enemy.
Well, that's who he is. Mistake yakho guys. Masidlulapho. Mistake yakho for God does not see like men.
I'm serious about this application because xa sisilwa we expect uThixo alwe nomntu
akhetha macala udibene ke ngoku noThixo kawonke uThixo who's loved, for God who has loved the world, not a niche of Adventists, a niche of super people, not even jonga look uTupaulos uba uThixo wathi amaJuda wakhethile, because amaJuda ayi pilot project, the first word pilot project is seen in this space where God chose this man and made him a pilot project to create a nation. Wathi seyenzile pilot project yathi yawubhatala pilot kude kuzalwe sibengakholwa wathi okay gate closed ndiyagqitha ndivula umnyango kwabanye abantu. That is the God kakade bebe means to an end. When Israel and the Hebrews were created, God wanted them to be an attraction for everybody else. So xa befeyila wathi mani ke phumani ecaleni beningengoba nedwa naba ngabam kakade. And Jesus came up and opened the gate for everybody. Because uThixo ngowethu sonke. Athi umuntu xa sowugeza ucinga wena kuba unemali kuba wena uzala engazali ugeza athi ancoma umuntu onisizakekela athi bona nje uThixo ngowethu sonke. That's the God ke singakwazi ukumunderstand ngoba thina siqhele uJoshua othi uthi xa uvela uthi ngoweliphi icala athi xa ndizingeni andingowakho andingowabo ndingowasezulwini. That's the God efuneka simazi.
Atsho umuntu eshushu enxilile.
Axelele.
Athi uThixo ngowethu sonke.
Wethu sonke.
Mve xa esithi mve xa esithi Gazlam mve xa esithi Gazlam mve xa esithi my thoughts are not your thoughts.
Isaiah.
Mve xa esitsho athi neither are your ways my ways. Mve xa esitsho mve xa esitsho athi as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. Lo Thixo ka wonke nguThixo ka the sinners. He's the God of the sinners. He's the God of the rejects. He's the God of the rejects. Look at how he takes care of uHagare no Ishmael. Oh,
can I add engamcelanga? Can I add this part? Akacelwanga nokucelwa. uThixo didn't wait for Hagar to say, oh Thixo ka Abraham, Thixo ka tata umntanam. He's suffering in her pain. And uThixo umthetho wamqala ngoku wayegezile wathi buyela kumedebe wakho uyozithoba. Ngoku uhamba egxothiwe legally. uThixo evuma isithi kwaAbraham vuma hambe ngoba icebo lamanzi ukwenzeka kuzabakho always this shadow. uThixo umbone ekhala. uThixo didn't wait for her to call. uThixo ngoba ngowakhe came. Yile nto esithi God Elroy. uThixo kanti uyandibona. Ichorus yokuqala le chorus esithi kanti uYesu uyandibona yacula ngwaGary kudala. Yacula ngwaGary kudala dala. uThixo kanti uyandibona yahamba endleleni enzima. When nifika late kuyo.
The God who sees. I mean we can't
know. I need
we can't begin. We can't begin.
I needed to go directly to somebody
begin
that's
to
watching the
fathom,
show.
Gazlam.
Yes. Yes, Gazlam. You have to begin to fathom, Gazlam, you were saying?
We can't. He says we can't begin to fathom. He's too deep for us to get to the depth of him. He's too high for us to reach up.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Right. We can't fathom how and why God does things and why he allows some of the things. You know, we can't fathom. But especially kwelibali lika Sarah no Hagar, the plan of salvation, into esingazukwazi we understand into yoba yenzeka njani kwelibali kule drama, kule bold and the beautiful, you know. But that's where God, how see to God is unfair. That's where God, we can't create God in our image.
Aye.
We can't create God in our image.
If we could, then then he becomes like those things that are destroying Abraham. If we could control him and make him behave like we think, then ufana nezithixo zenziwa ngezandla zithuthwe ngabantu bazibeka apho bafuna uzibeka khona.
You know, Gwenya,
and I can as well say, Gazlam, ukwenzela basi apply kakuhle lento. Ishmael was not a son of promise.
That's why you have to go.
Was not a son of promise. Okay, but Ishmael was also blessed.
He
was not a son of promise. He did not come according to God's method, you know. But he was also blessed. And look at someone right now.
He's an application. He's an application.
This child,
Ishmael.
hayi mani thinda ukunika i-application mani nombuyisele kancinci thinda ukunika futhi nje ka-understand utshilelwa rhoji lihlumelo lakwarhoji kodwa umfundisi uze ngotshilelwa kwarhoji funa ndithini yes application ubabalwa ndiva ndithini kwarhoji bonke abeze ngomthetho uba bekuhamba ngokucebo lomntu uqiniso wam befuneka bengumfundisi kodwa uthixo wathi andicingi njengani kwathatha utshilelwa ohamba ubiwa ngapha kwakhethe ngani ngubabalwa waba ngumfundisi ndifuna ndithini ke xa ndichaza ndithetha njengokristel ke ngondibeke etafuleni.
That's the application I wanted to make. That's the application I wanted to make. You are a woman right there. You are watching. And you are thinking, Indoba, you are having a mistake in your hand. Listen, that child is not a mistake. That child, omphethe esandleni, ongazanga ngendlela. We are not justifying and say, go.
No.
Ishmael was not a son of promise. He was not a son of promise, but Ishmael was blessed by God.
Undivile ngosiphutumi nawe Jabu nisivile le ndithethayo
alihambi ngathi icebo likaThixo. There you are with that child onaye esandleni sakho. That child might not be umntana wasemtshatweni, but that child uThixo uvumile into yoba that child abe khona a-existe, and there's a purpose kaThixo kulamntana. So I want you to know into yoba uHagar, when he says the God who sees, uyakubona uThixo ukulo meko ukuyo, ukwezo circumstances ukuzo, ukwezo meko zikaHagar uyakubona uThixo.
I think I like le ndawo sikuyo. Usathana ngokulwana nge-load shedding apha where I am. But I think I like le ndawo sikuyo. And somehow namhlanje kange ndilihoye nexesha saying 1 minute past 3. But I think ndiyayithanda la ndawo ethi mphulaphuli mbukeli wale program. If there is anything ekuthiwa yi-victim of circumstances, please know. uThixo udlalela la team ye-victim of circumstances.
Yes. Look, when we talk about salvation, one of the things we learn from the story.
I also want to say this.
Mapumulo was building a point.
Yeah, one of the things that we learn in the story of Sarah that sometimes people don't talk about is the fact that Sarah was a gracious person, hospitable person. And history says her place was always lit up even at night to make provision for those that in need, so that she would help them. Now, the story of the promised son of Hagar specifically is the story that God allowed to happen because he saw a need in the character of Sarah. Because Sarah, like anybody else, had a what do you call this? Let me say a weakness for the lack of the better word. Had a blind spot. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Had a blind spot. One of the blind spots that Sarah had was patience. Now, Sarah believed in the promise, but Sarah was not patient for the fulfillment of the promise.
Okay.
Because some people think that Sarah did not believe in the promise. She was
did. She did, Sarah.
Because God operates in this fashion. Number one, that He gives you the destination, but He is not clear about the journey. You don't have God is clear about the destination, but he does not give you all the facts about which map.
imap ayibamba apha kuye esifubeni.
And this is
umuntu wakudala wena wemap abambi navigator.
Bendixelele nje nditshilo nje kuwe khandiyiphike leyo nditshilo kuwe izolo.
He confessed that upfront.
Ndithethile loo nto.
GPS.
But yes, and this is where we all battle. This is where we all identify with Sarah, is that when we don't understand which route to take to our destination, we then decide to create our own path to that destination.
Okay.
Exactly. You know, sometimes when we get to a supermarket and you're looking for something and you don't know where it is, I always say to my wife, just ask the person who works. Before we go far, because you save yourself time. So if Sarah, you know, look at this now. Sarah then make up a decision. I'm going to use Hagar to fulfill the promise. So she goes to Abraham to make this suggestion. Now, Abraham takes it up. Now, Ellen White says, actually, in that sin, SCENE, in that act, it's Abraham who failed, but not Sarah. Because Abraham should have, as the priest of the home, called Sarah to order.
Yes.
And say, let's wait for God's promise to be fulfilled.
Thank you.
And so Abraham actually failed Sarah.
Of course.
yenye indawo leyo efuna i-application leyo singotata and leaders in the church and leaders emakhaya. Because this particular episode and although namhlanje sithetha ngoSarah, and I did warn earlier that interchangeably there will be things where we bring Abraham into the picture, because this is Abraham's failure. Ilando lokshini kuthiwa iflop ka-Abraham. Because he was supposed to contextualize into ye patience with God's promises.
Yes.
Especially Mputhumi, ukhumbule uSarah besesitshilo ebengekho wrong completely culturally. Izicaka zakhe bazizibeleko ze extra zakhe. So she was culturally correct. Kodwa there was a spiritual message here and a promise from God that Abraham should have protected. At hayi not kule game nomimi. Ndiyavisisa normally if besifunela abantwana besayenza lento. Kodwa kule game uThixo has been particular about this one. Uthi ngawe through your womb, and therefore we'll have to wait.
So in other words, what reminds us, Uguti, you must never think that when you have accepted Christ, your culture out of which you come from will never interfere
with God's
plan. So
yes, right there, Ngwenya. What Agnes here is saying, one of the viewers, Agnes Totoriko Jubane Moyo. Agnes, God made a promise to Abraham and also promised Hagar. Yabona lo mntu wena umbona esethavern every day. Ngenye imini uzakuthuka xa udibana naye ezulwini.
There you go.
Thank you.
No respecter of persons, my Bible says, for God is no respecter of persons.
Gazlam, that I so wish. There's another lesson, Gazlam, that I also wish somebody listening here, Sarah, they must know infertility.
Thank you.
It's not a punishment.
Infertility is not a punishment. Thank you.
Yes, God is not punishing you if you are not able to conceive. If you are not able to conceive, remember that His plans are not for us to question. Okay, He may be waiting. Utiko may be waiting for a time that He determines. He may have plans for you when to adopt a child. Okay, He's protecting you from something. We have man. So He may be drawing you toward a deeper dependence on Him. Utiko wetu does not use infertility to punish us for our sins. Ndiyafuna umuntu omamele elibali ongenamntwana othi yena izawuthatha. God does not use. We are all sinners and we deserve the way uThixo asitrita ngaso xa sisonke, you know. So ndiyafuna into yoba umuntu akhuthazeke phaa into yoba angacingi into yoba mna ndi-cursed. You are not cursed. God is having plans zakho ngaye. You know, he's having your plans. He's still having your plans, and his plans are for you to prosper, even if you are infertile. Uhleli phaya. Icebo likaThixo ngawe likhona. God has a provision ngawe, because he's protecting you from something, and he wants you to take care, mhlambi to adopt someone, okanye he wants you to depend entirely on him. I wanted to singamki kwibali likaSarah singakhange simention lo point.
Right sis. Enye into efuneka bayazi abantu abangenabantwana. Mabayazi bangaba akho nto ibhetere esiyenzileyo thina abantu abanabantwana asibhatalanga ukudlula bona. Nathi we were favored. So nobody has earned the right uba nabantwana. So ongabafumaniyo akabethwanga nobafumanileyo akabathenganga akabhatalanga ukudlula abanye abantu. Futhi akenzanga bhetere empilweni yakhe ukudlula abanye abantu. It's just God's favor.
But that's big. That is big and deep what you've just said, because thina abantu abane ability yokuba sibe kanti sifumene abantwana. Sometimes siyacinga into yokuba we have bought enough airtime kuThixo.
You know, seriously, since we just favored.
And it's a story of grace all the way.
Yes, exactly.
There is nothing.
Thank you, Put. Yilento sithi unyana kaAbraham, who's this one? The first one to say uLeah uyageza ugezela uYakobi. Uthi uYakobi nabantwana mna uthi khangela lapha andingoThixo andizalisi bantu. He got it zisuka. uYakobi wathi ngicela wathi kama mna ntombazana hlala phansi abantwana abaveli kubo ungabona abantu benzileyo nabo benziwe nguThixo benziwanga ndim. Utsho kuRachel ekhalela ubulili uyazala yena akazala wathi Rachel susukhalela kumsuthi undidlikihle andikwazi kwenza abantwana naba yandibone bekhona benziwe nguThixo, and the sooner we understand that the better.
Look Ngwenya, here is very important also lesson about Sarah.
We're going to close Ngwenya. Ndifuna while you are talking uSismonde noSismbuyi balungise ezabo parting shots kwesi story. Okay, so do take your minute, and each one of us will take each a minute, and then sizova.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope lo mama wa Radebe uvile erana order lo mama. But here is my point. Look, Sarah did not become a mother when she was born. She only became a mother when she believed in the faithfulness of God.
Thank you.
Now,
Usara did not become a mother. Okay,
Usara did not become a mother when Isaac was born, but she became a mother when she believed faithfulness in fulfilling his promises. That's when she became a mother of all mothers. So in other words, good people, in our journey of faith, we as soon as we believe in God's ability to deliver whatever in your life, God counts you as faithful.
Amen. Thank you.
I know that these faith believers of works are going to have a problem with this one. Let me repeat myself. The day you believe that God is faithful to deliver what he has promised, at that point, God counts you as righteous, as faithful. And so for whatever you desire from God, you expect from God, has revealed to you to be able to do for you, as soon as you believe, I'm saying to you, God counts you faithful and righteous. That's the story about Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. Your parting shots, Kazi, Monde?
Lendithethwa ngubhuti ngoku uYakobi uAbraham chapter 17, it says, when he believed, ebegqiba uphoxana noThixo sithi kuzawutya amakhoboka am ilifa lam, wathi uThixo, it's you. Why? When he got it, iBhayibhile walala phantsi wavuma. And that moment, iBhayibhile it was counted to him as righteousness. It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, mna ndihamba noNtlubulezi ukunyuba. Chapter 18, uThixo uthetha noAbraham uzovuselela isithembiso, ebesesivuselele kuAbraham chapter 17, and he believed, way before chapter 18, uThixo ngekeze uzeGomora, wakholwa uAbraham, uThixo wathi ulikholwa. Chapter 18 uthi xa iyiva lento xa ndihambayo, uSara ayive ihletywa ngendlebe bengekho mos, athi agqiba anyube, ndicela ukuthetha isiXhosa ndithi anyube. uThixo ubuza loo nto, uthi uThixo unyuba ntoni? Ngoba kaloku khona ukuhleka akufani.
Yes.
Uyaqonda? Athi unyuba ntoni lo? Aphike lo. But the same Sarah a year later still laughs. But it's a different laughter.
Yes.
uThixo khangelani, uThixo undihlekisile, and Thixo is pleased with the second laughter.
Yes.
And everybody who hears this story will remember that there is a God who will tickle you and make you laugh.
Yes.
Ithi eyam ephumayo, xa uThixo engathi akakuva, xa uThixo engathi uhlekisa ngawe ngamehlo enyama, ubona kuba ufuna ukumdimanda uThixo, ithi ude uqonda uba uhleka amakholwa ebethi iBhayibhile ecula, uhleka uthi bamosha ixesha labo. Mamela, just hang in here. Take a lesson from Sarah. It took 25 years for God's promise ukuba fulfilled. She was 65 when it was first said, Abraham was 75, 25 years later. It doesn't matter how long God takes to answer you, but believe you me, he is faithful, he will deliver, for he is not man that he should lie. Akuhlekise, uhamba uhleke esicithini isicithi. Bathi abantu uhleka ntoni nasisi, i-testimony yakhe ibhalwe ebusweni uthi uThixo bani undihlekisile. Abuze umuntu xa etheni ushumayele umxelele into akwenzeleyo uThixo. So unyamezela, uThixo uza kuphendula. Akunyumbaza, akuhlekise njengoSara. Ndigqibile bhuti.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Gazlam, your parting shot.
My parting shot, Gazlam, iti, guys, following God isn't always easy. Ukuthembeka kuThixo nokulandela uThixo akuzilula, but it is always worth it. Abakhona amahlande nyuka ekholweni uThixo. Akubikho lula all the time. Awubikho ngcwele all the time. God, choosing to be faithful to God is not always the smoothest road. God never promised us that once we place our faith in Jesus, that life will be all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, the Bible says quite the opposite. It says quite the opposite. So ukumthemba uThixo nokukholelwa kuye ayithethi ukuthi uzawusoloko uperfect usenza izinto ngendlela lonke ixesha. Kuzaba khona amaxesha apho ufuna uzenzela khona, kube khona amaxesha ungamthembi uThixo, kube khona amaxesha kube nzima. It's not always easy. In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted ngamanye amaxesha. So each one of us, we are going to face different types of persecutions.
Challenges.
Our journeys are not the same. Our journeys are not the same. Don't know. Three-legged drama ibisenzeka endlini kaAbraham. We don't know. But our journeys are not the same. But God has promised us eternal life. And that, my friend, is more than
true.
worth it.
Amen.
Oh, it's worth it. Ungawa namhlanje uzawuvuka ngenye imini, ungasilela namhlanje kodwa ngokukaThixo. Jonga uSara ebemmesa apha eyintoni, kodwa simbone vela kuHebrews 11 verse 11 uba uSara naye ebalwa kubantu abebenokholo. So according to abantu ungafailisha ngenxa yemistakes zakho, kodwa according to uThixo you can rectify and reconcile with God.
Amen, Bomama. Thank you so much. Bacho nababukeli. But thank you so much. Ndiyayithanda ke laa nto ubuyithetha into yokuba laa three-legged pot yayisenzeka kwa-Abraham. Kudla ngokuthiwa sometimes apha etivini xa ku-advertise izinto kuthiwe don't try this at home.
Yeah.
Please, disclaimer, Baba. Disclaimer.
Yenzeka yona kwa-Abraham, but
Disclaimer.
don't try this at home. Yeah, don't
Please.
try this at home. Yeah, please. Don't try this at home. Kungabi kumntu ozawuthi
Please.
nam ndingayizama.
Disclaimer, Baba.
Please.
Iyafuneka lo disclaimer bethuna. Masiyenze le disclaimer. Yeah, apha ku-Faith Heroes ethi don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home. Ingaxaka phambili.
Siyambulela ubawo for this.
Yeah.
We want to thank God.
Amen.
We want to thank God. I-comments zabantu ezivela ngaphandle. Abanye bathi hayi mayibuye le panel suka. Abanye bathi part 3 njalo 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 njalo. What I do know.
Izaba series Sarah. Izaba series Sarah.
Abe no season 2, no season 3, no season 4. What I do know.
Life president.
What I do know is that Mfundisi Mapumulo will then find us another Bible character, and by the grace of God, Kale panel available. Yawuthi ngelo xesha is available. Lo msebenzi bekumele basiyawenza kakade ukujikeleza ezitrongweni nasezibhedlele nakuzo zonke izindawo. I-technology xa ibivala i-virus ekuthiwa yi-corona. Uthixo wavula ngale technology, so that not only should we be restricted to isibhedlele sasethembisa, but that we can reach the world nge-platform efana nale. So that we are not restricted by kuphela, but that we can go way beyond. And so we thank God. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you in the studio. Thanks to nabantu bebe participate namhlanje program. And I do want to say to the panel, if there's anything you can tell your children and your grandchildren tonight before you go to bed, God used you. Thank you so much.
We're humbled by being used. Honored.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.